Good afternoon, folks. I have met, I think, most of you previously, but if we haven't, my name's Ken Breen. I'm leading the team, the BSI team connected with the Narrow Orchards program, and over the next few moments I'll just be giving a brief update of what we've been up to since we rejoined the program in the middle of last year. So, as you know, we rejoined in about July last year, and essentially we've got two primary roles in the program. Firstly, some research, which I'll be describing shortly. In this, we aim to answer a couple of questions. Firstly, what is the impact of the design, tree design, or configuration, number of uprights in planar systems, that kind of thing, on yield or on the harvest index? How can we balance the annual growth and the standing growth of the tree with yield, which is obviously our economic target? Secondly, what is the most appropriate training design to establish in narrow row pedestrian orchards? And to do this, we've got a number of experiments underway, one in some pears at Tatura, and then a couple in commercial cherry and apricot blocks in New Zealand. So the first area is research. The second area is some scientific and technical support for both the research teams involved in narrow orchard systems, the program staff, and as well as that growers across Australia. So the first area of work we've been working on is I guess the influence of growing systems on harvest index in pears, and for this we're using a mature block of pears at Tatura station, and we're looking at a number of factors which I'll talk about shortly on the effect on the allocation of dry matter to the tree components, the fruit versus the annual prunings versus a semi-permanent structure or the permanent structure, and obviously trying to maximize allocation to fruit, which is what the second point here is. How can we maximize the annual dry matter allocation to fruit as opposed to vegetative growth, which we then have to prune off? So these are some images. The various factors involved are a dwarfing versus a vigorous rootstock, and then two tree form factors, if you like, that we're looking at. Firstly, the spacing of what we might call center leader trees in the row. Either the trees are spaced at 2 meters apart or 1 meter apart in the row, or half a meter apart in the row down the row. And the second thing is the number of uprights between 1 and 6 uprights. This is an example of 6 uprights, 4, 2, and 1 upright per trunk. The uprights are always spaced at half a meter apart. So in fact, these are single trees spaced at half a meter apart. And that's the second area of work, and what we've done to start off. How far have we got? We've calculated, or in the process of calculating, the standing size from last winter. We are investigating 3 ways of doing that. Firstly, physical measurements, which we did in just before bud break, versus image analysis, which is just images using, like this one here in the bottom right, with an iPhone camera, versus LiDAR. This is a point cloud from a LiDAR image that we've taken, and that round ball in the middle is actually a tennis ball, which gives us a reference size for the rest of the tree. This is the same tree, however, the LiDAR was working from the one side of the tree, and the camera took the photograph from the other side of the tree, so you can see some distinctive form of the tree here that it's the same tree, it's just from different sides of the tree. So we're starting calculating winter standing size. We'll repeat that this coming winter. We've got summer pruning weights, which we collected, and we've just done some harvest weights. In unfortunately a very light, in fact an off season this year. We had intended that we would only do one season of work, but we may in fact have to do 2 seasons because of the very light crop in this season. So that's the pears. This is now work on cherries. In this, we're using a newly established block of cherries in Central Otago in New Zealand. It's about, 3 years old. Just finished their 3rd season, I think. And here we wanted to look at the influence of the number of uprights on light transmission within the canopy, and particularly how it impacts flowering and fruiting in these upright shoots. Ultimately understanding how dry matter is allocated in the tree, and dry matter is allocated to fruit in the tree. So some questions, for example, do fewer upright shoots increase the number of flowers and fruit in the lower canopy? So obviously if we're reducing the upright numbers, there's a potential to be reducing potential yield, but the converse of that is it might actually increase the number of flowers and fruit in the lower part of the canopy, and it might compensate it for it. And actually the quality, particularly the size of the fruit, might increase with better light relations in the bottom of the canopy, and particularly in cherries, as we know, fruit size has a strong premium, and so the value of the crop might actually increase significantly despite having fewer uprights and possibly fewer fruit. So here we've got just some examples. So these are the planar cordon systems. The work we'll be doing is we'll be looking at either 5 or 6 uprights per cordon. So this has 6 uprights. This should have 6, but the end ones are, distal ones are a little bit late in developing. So we'll test either 5 or 6 upright shoots per cordon. Doesn't sound like necessarily a big difference, but it does shift the uprights from, say, 20 centimeters apart to 25 centimeters apart to 30 centimeters apart, which could be significant in terms of light penetration into the canopy. Here we are just measuring some baseline light interception at the beginning of the research. So we'll be looking at upright shoot development and growth over the season, fruit yield and fruit size, which will begin next season. We'll be estimating the allocation of dry matter to the different components of the crop, of the tree, light interception I've talked about, and in the final season of this program we'll actually be looking at distribution of light within the canopy as well. Apricots, so we're looking at using an established block of planar cordon apricots on a commercial block also in Central Otago. The grower has currently managed a system with a large number of uprights, fairly free-form arrangement, but we want to look at different approaches to managing this system, considering a slightly more or a more pedestrian style system with a formalized number of uprights. We can't go to a full pedestrian system in this program, in this orchard, because we're using Golden Queen vigorous seedling rootstocks. So we're going for a slightly larger than a full pedestrian block. The kind of questions we want to understand is if we're going to maintain a shorter canopy, how do we do that? Is it better to recycle uprights more frequently, or is it better to maintain the upright shoots for longer but manage them by reducing the height of the shoots? Here are the three blocks. We've just initiated this work with some some reconstructive pruning, so we're expecting a drop in crop load next year, but hopefully picking up the following years. So these two treatments currently are the same. We've reduced the number of uprights and formalized it, and then these we will be recycling the full upright, so a large upright like this will come out next season and hopefully be replaced by maybe a younger shoot. Here we'll be shortening the leaders at the top in spring, and here the grower still has to do some pruning, which will open the canopy slightly, but it's pretty free form in that style. We also got an observational block on our orchard on our research blocks, which we'll be looking at various tree and components of yields type of work. So the other area of work that we've been up to is supporting other science staff and research staff in the program. We've got a number of outputs there, which I'll leave you to have a look at. And we've also had a number of grower interactions in Australia, one in New Zealand, and a handout that we've developed, which we've been using, describing some of the work that we're up to. We've also submitted an article to Australian Tree Crop magazine, giving a bit of a background, and that we've entitled it, "How do we grow more fruit and less wood?" And so that's pretty much the update. Thanks for your time.